Do cops actually expect an honest answer when they ask dumb questions like, "Where are you coming from?" or "Where are you going?" Do they expect you to panic and confess to the last crime that you committed? No. But these questions were asked in the No Stupid Questions subreddit, and as a traffic and DUI attorney, I defend my clients against this kind of stuff all the time. Let's see if the redditors actually give good advice and figure out what you should actually do in this situation. What's with police officers asking, "Where are you coming from?" or "Where are you headed?" Do they really expect a truthful answer? I got pulled over for not completely stopping at a stop sign. Didn't get a ticket, but the cop asked, "Where are you coming from?" and "Where are you heading?" I gave him some BS answers like home and the store. Neither was true. What are they really expecting to hear? "I'm going to commit a crime. I'm coming from my meth lab." I'm not one of those F the cops guys. I respect the police and not trying to come across as overly critical. But what's the point in asking these questions? Do people panic and blurt out things to get them in trouble? What would happen if I made it clear it was none of his business where I was going? This is a really good question. Let's see what Redditors have to say. It's phishing. Ding, ding, ding. The idea is to read you from how you answer, and that is the correct answer. The officer is sort of making small talk. Maybe he's just trying to be nice, but if you'd be nice, you wouldn't ask, "Where are you going? Where are you heading? Where are you coming from?" That's not being nice. That's fishing. He's wondering what you're gonna say. He believes he's got some reason to pull you over. He's curious what you're gonna say about your intents and your whereabouts and where you're going. Don't take the bait. Okay, and see, this is where people go crazy. Leviathan65 says, quote, "The jerk store, and they're all out of you." I don't encourage people to be a jerk to the police. This is a jerk comment, and it's gonna get you nothing but trouble. You do not need to talk to the police. That's my mantra on this channel. Don't talk to the police. But don't be a jerk to the police. This answer serves nothing to help exercise your rights. Generally speaking, people will be honest about where they're coming from or where they're going. A lot of times it'll just be coming from work or coming from a restaurant. "Well, have you had anything to drink tonight?" is one of the next questions. If you start opening up, it's hard to close back up. If the officer asks, "Have you had anything to drink?" or even "Where you're coming from," and you know you've had something to drink that night, the answer is, "I invoke the fifth." Black Lights in Bass says, "Got pulled over once because I was crossed the center line. Total BS, but okay. He asked me where I came from. I said Buffalo Wild Wings. I don't know why anybody'd go there. He then implied I was intoxicated by saying, 'Well, when people cross center lines, that is a sign of intoxication.' He clearly wanted me to say something like, 'Oh yeah, but I only had one beer.' I just didn't say anything to his comment. Read right through it. I had exactly one hard soda with my burger and wasn't gonna let him field sobriety check me over that. We shook hands and I was off." You know, it's a good point. They're talking about needing probable cause to do a DUI investigation. There's no such thing. They need reasonable suspicion to pull you over. And once they've pulled you over, if they smell the odor of alcohol and you admit that you've had any alcohol or even just coming from Buffalo Wild Wings, which is a bar, that gives them reason to ask you to do field sobriety tests. Now, they can't arrest you just because you're coming from Buffalo Wild Wings and cross the center line, but they can certainly ask you to do field sobriety tests. And if you agree to do them, you've agreed to continue letting them investigate that path. They don't need probable cause really to open a DUI investigation. They just need a reason to pull you over. They need some suspicion that there's DUI going on here, and then they need your cooperation. You don't need to cooperate with them for this situation. Lana, Louisiana adds a really good point. To add to this, they can usually tell if you're having a hard time stringing answers together quickly and coherently, which is an easy way to determine if the driver is impaired. Source: I watch DUI/DWI arrest videos for a living. I'm not sure what kind of living you have. Maybe you're a defense lawyer. But yes, it's exactly the point. They're not so much looking for an honest answer. They're looking for answers that make sense. So if you say, "Hey, I'm coming from work," and they say, "Where's work?" and it's somewhere all the way across the county and you're nowhere near, work or nowhere on the right path between work and home, it doesn't make sense. That's what they're looking for as well. And also, I'm wondering if anybody's going to get into this. They're looking for your speech pattern. They're looking to determine if you have slurred speech, if you're talking, clearly and coherently or not. So that's one of the big issues. So we have a response to that from Cora Weiss as flustered and nervous is not the same thing as slurred and nonsensical though. You've heard drunk people talk before. It's very obvious. Yes and no. I watch a lot of DUI videos for my living, and there's a few that aren't, but almost every DUI report that I read says the person had slurred speech. And frankly, At least half of the videos that I watch along with those reports, the person does not sound like they have slurred speech to me. But the officer detects slurred speech, and he was there in person and must have got a better view and a better way to hear what they were saying versus the video. If you're an officer and you're looking for a DUI, sometimes you see and hear what you want or need to see and hear. This is a good one. Wayne X says, it's also important to note that while you are not required to answer any of those questions, it is illegal to provide false responses. The police are free to lie to you. The inverse is not the case. In the 90s, I was charged with obstruction of justice for saying I didn't do it. I did. It turned out not to be a crime, but giving a false account to police was. That's not exactly correct. It's correct 100% that the police can lie to you. It's crazy, but they can and do lie to you. It is not exactly correct that you cannot lie to the police. The line is very sometimes gray, but the basic principle is if the police are investigating a crime that you allegedly committed, you can lie to them, basically about where you're coming from, where you're going, etc., etc. However, if you're giving them false information and saying that so-and-so did it, somebody else committed the crime, you're essentially, in a way, sort of making a false police report, and you're sending them down a rabbit hole by giving them false information that they may follow up on that false information and expend police resources, etc. It is a crime that you could be charged with if the police are investigating an offense about somebody else. So if they're coming to you as a potential witness or victim about a crime and you give them false information, you lie, that is definitely a problem. But that's why the best rule of thumb is to not talk, because you don't have to talk. And if you lie, it could be a problem depending on the situation. Also, police are trained to detect lies. And so if you begin trying to weave a web of lies to try to keep yourself out of trouble, the officer is likely going to figure it out and the game will be up and they'll know you're lying. Butters says, if anything, it'll make me more nervous because I'll overthink the answer even though it should be really easy. Then it'll look like lying because now I'm overthinking my answer. It's a really good point. Police sometimes, and judges as well, don't really consider that people who are in the criminal justice system for a living, we are used to interacting with the police. We're used to talking with the police. Sometimes police officers are our friends, outside of the courtroom even, and so we're used to the concepts. We're not nervous being around the police. And we really don't take into account the fact that the average citizen being on the receiving end of a police investigation is going to be very nervous. And those nerves really can affect how you're going to respond to police questions and how you're going to respond to different exercises they may ask you to do. Okay, Automatic Diamond 52 gives us an example of what not to say. I told one cop I had a date with his wife. I got a $250 ticket. That's a bad plan. Bad plan. Odd the Red gives us another great insight. It's a combination of phishing and what is called a divided attention test. This test evaluates if you're on any substances. Someone who is on a depressant or narcotic will have issues doing a physical task like handing over your paperwork and a verbal one like answer vapid questions that are none of the officer's business simultaneously. You don't have to answer the question, by the way, Fifth Amendment. Edit. Legally, you must articulate your desire to remain silent or to not answer any questions. You cannot just be silent. Officer, I do not have to answer any of your questions. I'm invoking my right to remain silent. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here, but this is a really good response. That yes, they're phishing, and yes, it's a divided attention test. That's what all the field sobriety tests or exercises actually are. They're divided attention. They have you do a couple things at the same time, trying to see if you can manage some simple tasks. So typically the way these questions go down is the officer comes up and says, ma'am, I pulled you over for speeding. May I see your license and registration, please? And while you're looking to get your license and registration, that's when they go into their next kind of simple questions. Where are you coming from tonight? And so they're trying to see if you're able to do some simple things at the same time. The point about the Fifth Amendment, of course, you do have the right to not answer any questions. Yes, you should say, I invoke the Fifth Amendment. But the flip side of this, people are really hung up on this fact that you're supposed to invoke the Fifth. If you don't invoke the Fifth Amendment, the officer may be allowed to testify that I asked where he was coming from today, and he did not answer my question. How does that hurt you? It really doesn't hurt you. You did not give him slurred speech. You didn't give him an incoherent answer. You weren't combative. You weren't a jerk. You simply didn't answer the question. A judge or jury is going to do nothing with that response. Simply that I asked him XYZ question. He gave me no answer. So because you didn't invoke the Fifth, they can maybe testify about that, but that's really not a hurtful thing. So that's why simply not answering the questions is an okay response in most traffic and DUI type situations. So what's the bottom line if you're stopped by the police and they ask you where are you coming from and where are you headed? If you know that you're not on any substances and haven't had anything to drink that day, it might be safe to simply answer, "Coming home from work, officer." You know, if you're not a jerk to the officer, hopefully he won't up the ante on you. Certainly you don't want to be a jerk, but you also can simply say, "I'd prefer not to answer questions." That's a fine answer. You're not specifically invoking the Fifth Amendment, no, and I'm going to get some flack from that. It's best to probably not answer any questions in those scenarios and to specifically invoke the Fifth Amendment. But if you know there's nothing going on that they're going to look for, it's probably not a bad thing to answer a simple question like, "Where are you coming from or where are you headed?" But do you really know that you haven't broken the law? There's so many laws out there, it's hard to know what you may be guilty of. So you got to be careful, and the best answer is to not talk at all. Keep in mind that all of this is subject to your state law. And so there may be duties you have to identify yourself, to provide your driver's license or registration if you're pulled over while driving in your state. In this next video, we're going to walk through another Reddit post asking whether you can get a DUI for sleeping it off in the back of your truck camper. I'll see you over there, and remember, don't talk to the police.